Welcome to GDs, and this is Godfather of Harlem, Season 1, Part 2. Bumpy, clearing his debt, goes back to Bonanno, and asks him to front him more product. But Bonanno tells him that he wants to give him the products, as a black man was responsible for his son's death, thus, he wants to fill Harlem with drugs. But for now, he cannot go behind Chin again. On the other hand, we see Elise, getting sober, and in order to find purpose, she joins Malcolm's mosque. Elise converts to Islam, and starts helping out at the mosque, to help others leave addiction. In the course of her recovery, she also reconciles with Mamie, and agrees to be a part of Margaret's life, as her elder sister. Elijah Muhammad, the founder of Nation of Islam, visits Harlem. He is impressed by Elise. He asks her to spy for him on Malcolm, as he is gaining a lot of support for his aggressive opinions. Malcolm and Adam Powell, both are fighting for the right of blacks, in their own but opposite ways. Despite their opposite ways, they agree to join, and go together for the March on Washington. Meanwhile, Teddy, not being able to stay away from Stella, returns back to Harlem. Stella is able to get him an audition, and later she gets him signed for recording. Teddy and Stella are caught kissing, and the police arrest them. Stella gets bailed out by Ernie, as he received a call from the captain who recognized her. As Ernie realizes that he killed the wrong man, Stella lets him know that if he tells her father about Teddy, he will be the first one to be killed, as he took out the wrong guy. But it turns out that Chin already found out about it. He gives Ernie a second chance to correct his mistake. Ernie, having feelings for Stella, and knowing how much she loves Teddy, doesn't want to do so. Instead, he tries to threaten Teddy, and wants him to leave the city. But Teddy lets him know that he is not leaving. Stella, knowing the threat against Teddy, goes to Bumpy for help. Bumpy, wanting the Italians to fight among themselves, comes up with a plan, where he gets Teddy's music contract shifted to Bonanno's company. Later, looking for more, he was able to figure out that it was indeed Chin who ordered for Bonanno's son to be killed. He goes to Bonanno, and informs him the same. Stella also backs him up, letting him know that her father saw his son and her together, and she also believes that her father killed his son. Knowing this, Bonanno goes to war with Chin, killing his men, and supplying products to Bumpy. Chin, getting to know that it was Bumpy who got Teddy's contract shifted to Bonanno's, goes after him. Bumpy gets shot, but he survives. Frank lets him know that he cannot go after Chin. Bumpy is not happy about it, as he was protected by the families, but they are not willing to support him. On the other hand, after Bumpy's life scare, Mamie asks Bumpy to make his will. It is when they realize that they have never legally adopted Margaret. Bumpy asks Margaret to give up her parental rights, but she refuses for now. But in the process, Bumpy and her are able to connect more, and they forgive each other for the past. Meanwhile in Harlem, having bad living conditions, and thereby rent not being paid by the tenants, is building up a protest. Reverend Powell fights for the right of the tenants. Malcolm also helps protect the tenants, but Elijah Muhammad doesn't want the Nation of Islam to be involved in political activities, but be a religious group only. Thus he asks Malcolm to stand down. But Malcolm is not happy with the same, knowing that he cannot stand with his people. With Reverend Powell trying to find out who is behind the shell companies, who own the buildings. Bumpy tells him that if he stops looking, he will pay for the tenants to get the repairs done, and this will end the protests, but Powell is not willing to do so. Bumpy meets with Bonanno, and tells him about Powell's investigation, informing him that all the mob families own a part of the shell companies, whom Powell is investigating, and if their names come out, they will all be in trouble. Bumpy asks him to get Chin removed from power. In exchange, he will get Reverend Powell to back off. Despite Bumpy's best efforts, even after using Esther James' case as a leverage against Powell, he is not willing to back down. Powell was able to find out that the shell companies are owned by the Italian mob families, as well as Bumpy Johnson. Mamie pleads to Powell not to give Bumpy's name to the authorities. Powell gives in to Mamie's request, and leaves Bumpy's name out of the investigation. On the other hand, Chin, not knowing why Bonanno is going after him, catches one of his men. It is when he learns that Bonanno is after him, because he found out that he killed his son. Chin is quite surprised, as apart from him, no one knew about it. Ernie suggests that Bumpy might have convinced Bonanno for the same, and he needs to convince him otherwise. Chin knowing this, takes Bonanno to his son's body, which he earlier removed. Chin tells him that it was Bumpy who is responsible for his son's death, and now, he is profiting the most from their war. He also lets him know that he forced Stella to speak against him. Chin was also able to prove to Frank that it was Bumpy who killed the made man, by finding out the only witness, whom they were able to track. Stella gets to meet with Teddy's mom. She makes her realize that with her, Teddy can never be safe. Stella, in order to keep Teddy safe, decides to break up with him. Later, Stella, broken because of the breakup, tries to end her life. But she survives. Chin, seeing her daughter like this, agrees that he will not go after Teddy. Teddy visits her as she recovers, and they rekindle their love again. Later, she learns from Teddy that he got them tickets to LA, and they can move away, as his music is being appreciated. And they decide to leave, after Teddy's performance at the Apollo Theater in Harlem. Chin's men, Benny, blames Ernie for not dealing with Teddy before, and now, because of him, Chin is in so much pain. He lets him know that although their boss has not asked, but they should do what is needed. On the other hand, the 5 mob families, also known as the Commission, gather together to question Bumpy. Bumpy tries to convince Bonanno that he had nothing to do with the death of his son, but he doesn't believe him. But with the fact that he killed a made man, was enough for the families to remove their protection. It is when Bumpy lets them know that he has all the information and records of their tax frauds and money laundering, and if anything happens to him, his family, or his men, the information will be provided to the authorities. Thus Bumpy is able to save himself for now. But he knows that if he will ever do so, he will also go to prison, as the records also implicate him. Later, President John F. Kennedy is assassinated. Bumpy knows that he was the one pushing for a lot of changes, and now, with him gone, they might not have the protection and the leverage that he thought he had. Thus, Bumpy sends his family away, as he knows that things are about to get rough. Elijah Muhammad advises Malcolm not to make any political statement during his interview regarding the assassination of the president. But Malcolm is not able to stop himself. As a result, when he returns back, he is asked to leave the nation and seize all communication with its members. With the president gone, Congressman Powell is also pushed in a corner. While the mob, using Esther James' case, is able to push him even further away. With Powell in the hiding, and the president gone, the investigation against mob also goes away, thereby making Bumpy lose his leverage. Chin sends an assassin after Bumpy, but Bumpy survives and is saved by Elise. While Teddy performs at the Apollo Theater, and as he comes out, Ernie goes to warn him, and ask him to leave town. As Ernie talks with Teddy, he is shot and killed by Benny, with Stella standing next to him. As the season ends, we see the commission, knowing that the investigation against them is closed, are asked by Chin to vote to take out Bumpy, and they all agree. Thanks for watching. And if you liked it, please subscribe.